Well, good morning. Happy Sunday morning. How are you all today? Welcome to Integrative Preparedness. I'm going to talk about something that many people might think is a little bit strange to talk about on a Sunday morning, and that is guns. Guns specifically for women. Guns for girls. This is kind of in response to, it is in response to some questions that I've had recently from a couple of women actually who came to our gathering. Was it last weekend? Just last weekend. What a great time that was. It was great to meet so many of you for the first time and see so many of you again. And if you weren't able to make it this year, we hope you'll make it next year. It's going to be on the first. I think I've decided I'm going to have it on the first Saturday of every October. Seemed to work out very well. Had a great time. A lot of very, very knowledgeable people there. And also a lot of very interested people interested in learning, and people more than willing to teach and share their knowledge. That's what we're about here. Usually I'm drinking out of one of our Stonemont mugs because, like I say, everything tastes better out of a Stonemont mug, right? But today I'm going to go back to drink out of a mug I used to drink out of all the time, and that is the Second Amendment mug. You know what the Second Amendment says? It says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Well, Steve, that was great that you memorized all of that. No, I didn't really. I read it off the back. But still, those of us who care and know about it, we know the meaning. If we aren't able to spout it at a moment's notice, we know what it means, right? And the reason that I'm talking about this, some people might think, like I said, it's odd that you're going to talk about this on a Sunday. Well, if you remember, and I have mentioned this many, many times, the night that Jesus was arrested, he said to his disciples, he says, I'm going away. I'm not going to be with you. Well, first he said, since I've been with you, have you wanted for anything? Meaning, did you need anything that you didn't get, right? No, Lord, they said, we wanted for nothing. He says, but now I'm going away. I'm not going to be with you. So take with you your purse, your traveling bedding, your scrip, your money, and he who does not have a sword, let him sell his cloak and buy one. A cloak being a very important piece of apparel back then. It's the heavy outer piece that they wore to keep them warm and sometimes to sleep in at night and all that. And buy a sword. Why did he tell him to buy a sword? Because he knew that now they were going to be able to have to fend for themselves, even though the Holy Spirit was coming, that physically in this world they might be called upon to defend themselves physically from physical attacks. And I've heard many people say that, including some priests and pastors, saying, well, but he said to use that as a defense. Well, in a way, yes. They say something even worse. I'll tell you that in a minute. If it was just for defense, he would have said buy a shield. But a sword can be defensive, but it can also be offensive. The threat of a sword is not in its defense, but in its offense. The threat of a gun is not in its defense, but in its offense. And while we would much prefer, we will always use it defensively, naturally. It is the power that it has in it to reach out and touch someone, right? To keep them from touching us or touching them again. I've also heard, I've gotten into it not gotten into it. We didn't get to knocking down and dragging out with a priest and a pastor that said, well, no, but he said buy a sword, but don't use it. No, he didn't. He didn't say that at all. The danger of not understanding what the Bible really says, the danger of following clergy who themselves either don't know or have chosen to misrepresent it, right? Let me take a sip. And where, of course, they get that is when they came to arrest Jesus, and and Peter took a swipe at the at one of the guard servants and cut off his ear. And Jesus said, put it away, and he healed the man's ear. He didn't do that because you're not supposed to use a sword. He did that because Peter was injecting himself into the will of God. Okay, now that is our sermon for today. Let's get into how this applies to us, and particularly women. Although, let me say also this I get a lot of questions from women, okay, but this applies to guys too. Okay, if you are not familiar with weapons, listen. Okay, I first want to dispel a couple of things that causes women to make the wrong decisions. Okay, let me start with an overall admonition not to believe everything you hear from everyone. There are many more people out there talking about guns than know about guns. So, like so much in life, right? There's more talkers than knowers, right? And I just, if you don't know me, I was in law enforcement for a number of years. I've carried a gun for over 50 years now, and I get my information from personal experience. Okay, what I have seen in on the street, in ERs, and in the morgue. Okay, so that's where I get my information to pass on. Too many women are concerned that they won't be able to handle a gun, so they go after a small caliber, and they're told this by their husbands and their boyfriends and the pimply faced kid and the gun counter and the magazines and everything like that. You know how many gun magazines there are out there? Most of you, if you don't really know, or even if you do, you can't believe the silliness that's in those magazines. It's much like martial arts magazines. Nobody who was serious in the martial arts ever read a martial arts magazine, because like we used to say, they're written for 12-year-old black belts. And for those of you who don't know, there should never be anything. Well, no, I'm sorry. They're written for 12-year-old yellow belts. There's too many places out there who let people get their black belts at 12, and they think they know, and you know what? They don't. Jim Harrison used to say, well, actually, Black Belt Magazine sounds more like it's written by 12-year-old yellow belts, because it's so basic, and in many cases it promotes things that simply aren't true, that wouldn't work in real life. It's simply a matter of they know what their audience wants to hear, and so they publish what their audience wants or will appeal to their audience, as opposed to what will serve their audience well. Okay, I used to say that when I ran a gym, I didn't jump onto all the latest fitness crazes, because I explained to my people the difference between a merchant and a professional. A merchant, if you're selling pizza, you need to know what kind of pizza people like, and then you make that pizza and you sell it to them. But if you're a professional, whatever kind of profession that is, you should know what you're talking about, and then you attempt to teach people the truth of the subject. Okay, and you don't change what you teach according to what they want to learn or want to hear. You teach the truth as you have discovered it yourself. You probably learned some, and then you were, if you are a true professional, you've been able to apply what you have learned to find out, does it work, does it not work? Okay, in the martial arts, I started martial arts when I was young. I had the opportunity to be out on the street and see what worked and what didn't work, and I'll tell you right now, most of the traditional martial arts techniques that were taught don't work on the street. So I never taught that, but we have whole millions of people that think that they do, because they've never had to use it. So that's where we come into guns here. You're going to hear a lot of information that's going to mislead you. Like I say, women are told, well, you need a smaller caliber because, after all, you're a dainty little woman and you can't handle the big ones like the guys can. That is a bunch of hooey. Flat out BS. And besides that, you don't want to You don't want your life to depend on something small when it would do better on something big. You know, size matters in this. So let me clarify what I'm saying here. Many women are kind of directed towards a 9mm. I always get hate when I talk about the comparative ineffectiveness of 9mm in comparison to more effective calibers like 40, like 45, like 357 Magnum, like 10mm. Okay, and now I will get, already I hear the frantic pounding on a keyboard of somebody out there who doesn't know. They have never used it in their real life, but they've read all the magazines talking about how deadly a 9mm is. No, it's not. Okay, I used to carry a 9mm, but as a backup. It was when I was undercover. My primary was a 45 ACP. I found myself in a situation one night that I thought, 8 rounds may not be enough to get me out of this situation, and so I went in the gun room the next day. There happened to be an FN high power 9mm in there that carried, I think, 13 rounds. It's the one I had read that Frank Serpico decided to carry up in New York, and so okay, well that's good. I got my 8 and my 45, and I'll go ahead and stick this 9 in the other side of my jeans. But I never would have depended on it as a primary round. I just wanted it for the capacity, and that's why a lot of people carry 9, is for the capacity. And you'd better, because it doesn't do the damage per shot that a larger caliber handgun does. Now, the reason that many let me insert something in here for anybody who is currently being enticed into leaving a comment here that might get you blocked or bounced. I said something in yesterday's, was it? It was about the Glocks being banned, new sales of Glocks being banned in California. I made the statement that I'm not a Glock guy because they're good guns, but in my experience, in my opinion, because I know it to be true, they're overpriced, and I didn't like the way that they broke into the American market. I could do a whole thing on that, but that's not what this is about. And somebody came on and actually made the comment, Glocks are good guns. They go bang every time I pull the trigger. What? If you feel tempted to leave a stupid statement like that, I had already said that it was a good gun. They were overpriced though. Okay. Why would you leave a statement? Probably because you're not paying attention, because you own a Glock, and because you just had this emotional desire to defend your decision to buy a Glock. Okay. I will say this, and then somebody came back on and says, "How can you say that Glocks are overpriced?" Well, because I've compared the prices with other effective handguns. Okay, all right. Hey, if you want to buy a Glock, go on. They're good guns. But let's get back to choosing something else. First off, so move up from the comparatively ineffective caliber of a 9mm to a more effective caliber of at least a 40. Okay, 40 Smith & Wesson. It's a larger round. Now, why do we say that? Here's where somebody will come on. I can hear it already, and they will tell you. But with the recent development of ammunition, the 9 is almost as effective as a 40 or a 45. Well, as Paul Harrell used to say, almost means it's not, right? Okay. And they seem to forget the fact that ammo improvements have also taken place in the other calibers. So, comparing today's 9mm to the 40 of 20, 30 years ago, no. Compare it now. And the reason that this is important, that I hope you will listen to me, because your life depends on it. The effectiveness of a round, as applied to a human, has to do with tissue damage and blood loss. I know that's terrible to talk about on a Sunday, right? No, tissue damage and blood loss. And the more tissue damage done, the greater the blood loss, the faster the blood loss, and the more quickly you're going to be able to stop that threat. Okay. A larger caliber makes a bigger hole. Now, some people will say, but with the expansion of a 9mm. Yeah, okay. Depending on exactly which round you carry. There have been study after study after study that shows that some expand better than others. Are you going to be sure that you have that one specific round that is going to expand maximally and do the most damage? Well, good luck. I hope that you do if you choose to carry a 9mm. But if you carry a larger caliber, you're not going to have to depend on that. And still, you can get hollow points that expand. Okay, so why not go there? There's an old saying that guys like me love, and that is, a small bullet may get bigger, but a bigger bullet will never get smaller. And when your life depends on it, do you want to depend on the saying that so many people, and here again, I see somebody else out there pounding this on their keyboard. Well, a 9mm is better than nothing. All right, and that's what you want to put your life on, right? Something that's better than nothing, or that's what you want to put the lives of your kids or people you love. Something that's better than nothing. A sharp stick is better than nothing, but I don't depend on it. I want the most effective round, and if I have to use it, I want something that's as effective as it can get. Okay, so that's number one. Move up in your caliber selection. Okay, there was a and then you'll get. I'm throwing in all of the things that I know I'm going to hear in comments. Oh, I saw on somebody else's. Another channel recommended my one of my videos, and so I went and I watched it, and then I saw a couple of comments down there about, I don't like this guy, I hate this guy because it shows me he doesn't know what he's talking about because he doesn't like 9mm. Well, that shows me what you are. You learned everything out of a magazine, right? I had a few people over to the house last week, all military and law enforcement. And most of the military guys were special operations guys. And do you know how many 9mm were carried among that group? None. One after another said, I carry 40, I carry 40, I carry 40, I carry 40. Okay. And this is so that you'll understand when that kid at the gun counter, or your boyfriend, or your husband's brother or whatever like that, who thinks he knows everything because he reads these gun magazines, when he says, oh, but the FBI carries 9mm. Well, there are reasons that the FBI carries 9mm, and they're not good reasons. I won't go into that now. Okay. You can, for those who trust in what I'm saying here, you're going to do well. If you choose not to, best wishes. I say things like that, and people say, he's arrogant. No, it's a combination of knowing what I'm talking about and being funny. That's all it is. Now, the reason that people carry 9mm as opposed to a larger is for the capacity, more rounds in the gun. But the thing is, if you simply move up to the 40, you have almost the same capacity as a 9mm. With much greater effectiveness. Okay. For instance, there's one of the guns that I carry in the 9mm. Well, I don't carry the 9mm. I wouldn't carry a 9mm. I would not. But in that particular model, it carries 16 rounds in the magazine. In the 40 caliber, in that same gun, okay, and in the 40 caliber configuration, it carries 14. At that point, between 14 and 16, if 2 rounds make a difference, you're in more trouble than a handgun is going to get you out of. Okay, so that doesn't make any. It simply doesn't make any sense. Now, the reason that I'm trying to help you here to make a selection is because I talk about this a lot. People ask me and ask me and ask me, and so often I will explain all of this to people. I said, do not. People say, what gun should I get? And you know what? I explain to them this, and you know what they end up doing about half the time? They come back and they say, well, I bought a 9mm because the guy at the gun counter said. Do you know how much real-world experience guys at the gun counter have? For the most part, not much. Most guys who have worked, now there are some, I mean the range that I belong to, it has some former law enforcement work in there, not much. Most of them are just young guys that enjoy guns. They love guns, they talk about guns all the time, they read all the gun magazines, right? And you know, whatever. And they believe what they read in the ads. You look at a gun magazine, it's not informational, it's advertising. Okay? It's 50 pages of advertising with about 6 pages. Now I'm exaggerating, but enough information in there that makes it look like a real magazine. But even that, the articles are essentially advertising themselves. So we've covered that. You want an effective round, not a sub-effective round. 9mm is sub-effective. 380, which is essentially a 9mm short, is really sub-effective. Can it kill somebody? Yeah, anything. A 22 can kill somebody if it hits in the right place. You know, if it hits in the right place. Here's another thing that you're going to hear from people. But it's not about caliber. It's about shot placement. We have a mug, one of our favorite mugs, our best-selling mugs. It's all about shot placement, and I put it out there as kind of a joke. Guys who think that their shot placement is great on the range, who have never been, and this is usually said by people with no real-world experience. Okay, you'd be surprised how much your shot placement will suck when somebody is about 15 feet away from you shooting at you. Ask me how I know. It's different, okay? And so going out on a flat range, meaning a gun range, and you're doing really well. You got a good group there, right? Okay, well, go out there and be carrying your groceries to the car and have somebody step out from the shadows and point a gun at you, and you drop your groceries, and first off, if you draw on him, you're dumb, but usually a bad decision to draw on a gun pointed at you. Sometimes you have no choice. Who knows? I'm not going to get into that. There's too much to get into that. But it's different. Don't let these people who don't have the experience come on and tell you what they think. Okay. And I know I'm gonna get a comment in there. I've got a lot of experience, and what you said is entirely wrong. And that guy doesn't realize that I can tell by how he talks that he doesn't, or how he types. So the next thing is get a gun that fits your hand. Now, smaller guns are more difficult. Let me put something in here more for you. Another reason that people try to convince you to get a 9mm is because it's so-called easier to handle, less recoil, easier for your follow-up shots. Well, in the first off, it doesn't. It's not. If I gave you, and I've done this, I've given somebody of the same model gun a 9mm and then a 40. And I've had them run through a magazine in the 9 and then run through a magazine in the 40. And I said, can you tell the difference? And they said, you know what they said? A couple of them said, no, not really. Most of them would say, a little, maybe. I think the second one was a little more recoil. I even had somebody say the first one, the 9mm, was more. It's not that big a difference. It's not that big a difference. And training helps. A proper grip. Get somebody who knows what they're doing to help you to learn, okay, to teach you how to shoot. With a proper grip, that recoil should be absolutely no consideration. And I'll tell you, the smoothest is a 45 in 1911. If you don't know what that means, 1911 is the model, the type, the specific model of a handgun. They're made by many different companies, but they are smooth. I mean, 1911 is my favorite. Second favorite. I'm tied. My 1911s, I love them. But my favorite gun is one that you'll never carry, and it's a Smith & Wesson Model 57 41 Magnum. Nobody will ever carry that except me, and maybe a couple of you out there. Okay, totally different. If you want to know about that, I don't know if I put it on YouTube or just on Patreon, but I show you. I put up a video about me shooting it is a monster. It is in many ways superior to the 44 Magnum. You know, dirty, hairy. I just love that gun. Auto loaders, like most people are the Glocks and the Striker fires and all that. They're guns. They're tools. Revolvers are works of art, in my opinion. But let's get back to this. Your recoil is not something to be considered because it's something that you can train yourself to handle. And my daughter, when she was 12, handled the 40 just as well as she handled a 9, and handled the 45 just as well. As a matter of fact, I think my wife, whose gun is a 40, she actually prefers the 45. Many people are scared, oh, that's too big. No, it's not. I mean, come on, you're a grown-up. If you're a grown-up, you can handle what my daughter, when she was 12, can handle, right? So don't let that dissuade you. Now, do pick a gun that fits your hand. I'm a believer in carrying the largest weapon that you can comfortably carry, okay, which is why I don't carry the Model 57 in the summertime where I'm wearing t-shirts. And besides that, it only has a capacity of 6. But I'm not one of these people who says the best gun is what you will carry. Okay, the best gun is the one that's most effective, and then you should learn to carry it. I did have a question from somebody. How do I carry this as a woman, especially in the summertime? And because women's clothes, your all's clothes don't fit like men's do. We wear cargo pants and jeans and heavy belts, and we can hold a fairly large firearm. Women are different. Consider the belly band. Okay, and I'll tell you what, I knew a woman who simply wrapped an ace bandage around her midsection there, and you can mess with this a little bit, and stuck it down inside that ace bandage. Said that she never had any problem with it falling out. I'm not suggesting an ace bandage. I'm just telling you, don't think that you have to spend a lot of money. Try the belly band. Let me just say that. Now, do pick a gun that'll fit your hand. Okay, if you're simply not, if you don't have hands that are big enough to handle a larger weapon, and by that I mean usually a 4-inch auto loader, get a little smaller one. That's why they make compacts and subcompacts. It's not going to make that big a difference, although if you go too small it can, because if you go too small it's harder to handle. Okay, and also you get more recoil with a smaller weapon. It helps a lot to have some mass in your weapon in order to absorb a lot of that recoil. If you get a kind of a small one, one woman that I knew, I told her get a 40 or bigger and all that, and she came back. She had a 9mm in a little baby 1911. I mean, I could barely get my difficult. I mean, easy to hide, right? Yeah, you'll carry it, but I mean, if it's hard to handle, especially in a stressful situation, and guess what? Being shot at is a stressful situation, unless you've been shot at a lot, and then it's still, kind of, it focuses your attention. And there's not a lot of us out here, except for the guys that have been over in combat, who have been shot at a lot, right? So it's not something that really the average person gets used to. But the smaller ones are harder to handle. So get something that fits your hand right. Something that has a decent capacity. And by that I mean more than 10 rounds. Yeah, I'm sorry for you all in California. What I said this the other day. What a beautiful state that's been ruined by such ugly people. Isn't that the truth? I loved California when I used to go out there, and there's a lot of great people out there. California is one of those, like New York and Washington State and Oregon, that takes a lot of hits from people that just hate. We have a lot. Did you know? You know this. I've said this before. I'm getting a little more irritated with it. We have just so much prejudice within the preparedness world. People just love to hate on people that don't live where they live or how they live or whatever like that. I just don't get it. But anyway, there's a lot of great people out there in those states, and it's been ruined by the others, right? Yeah. So get an effective weapon, 40 caliber, 45, 10 millimeter, 357 Magnum. Those are my suggestions. Don't be misled by the kid at the gun counter. Don't be misled by the idiot that leaves a comment in here about how effective a 9mm is, in case you happen to see it before I delete it. The reason that I delete these things, well, you don't believe in free speech. I'm not the government of the United States, in case you didn't know that. Okay, but if you thought I was the government of the United States, I'm not. I want to dissuade you of that illusion. But no, this is my channel. See, this is my classroom. And if you were in my class, if you were here physically, like I used to do in martial arts, when somebody would raise their hands and try to contradict something that I'm saying, it was always fun to say, well, step on up here and show me how effective your little thing is, your dim mock, your death touch. But we can't here, so I don't let people mislead, and they would never do it in person, right? But they'll do it on their keyboard. But I don't allow those things to stand because they are misleading. I'm trying to help, I'm trying to teach, and I'm not going to let some moron who, like I say, walks around, who has a stack that high of gun magazines next to his bed, but never carried a gun professionally or never used it. Not here, guys. There are plenty of other channels out there you can talk all that BS about. Go there. So don't pay attention to the ones who don't know. Get one that fits your hand. And then get training. Find somebody. It doesn't have to be. Go get a concealed carry permit in your state. Not that that's so important in itself, because more and more states now are becoming constitutional carry states, which means you don't need a class to carry. You don't need a certificate to carry in your state. Okay, you don't need a license to carry in your state, but you do need it to carry in other states, those states with reciprocity to your own state. So get one. Get your concealed carry permit. That's the term I was searching for. Get your permit. One thing that those classes do is to familiarize you with the particular laws of your state as it pertains to the proper and the legal use of lethal force in defending yourself. Does your state have the castle doctrine? Kansas does, Missouri does. I think more states are. Do you have a duty to retreat? Not in Kansas. All those kinds of things. Understand your rights, responsibilities in carrying a weapon, and get some training on it, and then go practice. You don't have to go out and find some former Delta guy, or SWAT guy, or SEAL to teach you how to shoot. It's pretty basic stuff. And I know a lot of people spend a lot of money going through all sorts of guns. That's really not that necessary. There's some very basic things that you need to master: gun handling, gun safety, and then you need to just start putting a bunch of rounds through that weapon. Know how to clear a jam. Not that difficult. Don't be, frightened off by that. And then put a lot of rounds. And then mindset. It's all about mindset. It's all about you accepting the responsibility of carrying a deadly weapon and being ready to do it. Ready, willing, and able. And you don't want to be making those decisions when all of a sudden, when you haven't thought about it, but all of a sudden, something jumps out of the dark at you, and now you're having to go through this. I always talk about your three enemies under attack: confusion, fear, and then the attacker. You don't want to be dealing with that confusion and fear during that. You want to be able to deal with the attacker. And it's kind of like the OODA loop, but if your OODA loop ain't looping, you're in the first stage of confusion. So think about it. Think about in what situations would it be appropriate for you to use that weapon. In what situations is it legally allowable, morally allowable? There are some cases that it's probably legally allowable but not morally allowable. I mean, you make your own decisions on this. I'm not going to get into that. That's kind of deep. I probably shouldn't even have mentioned that. But you figure it out. But think about it up here so that you're ready. And when you're ready, you'll be ready. And if you haven't been in a life-threatening situation before, no matter how ready you think you are, either you're going to realize while it's happening that you wish you were more ready, or afterward you're going to be going through kind of a response cycle of, questions. Let me just put it that way. Okay. So ladies, like they say that Sam Colt, the old saying of God created man and Sam Colt made him equal. Well, the firearm is the great equalizer, and there is no reason that you shouldn't carry, and there are many reasons that you should, so that you, like Christ told his disciples, you are responsible for your own welfare. You are responsible for your own defense, and you're responsible for the defense of those who depend on you, or could depend on you. What if you're in a situation to where somebody is out shooting at somebody else, and you could do something about it, and you didn't because you didn't have, you weren't ready. So anyway, those are the basic things. It doesn't have to be complicated. Carry an effective weapon. Learn how to use it. Know when to use it. It comes down to those three things. Okay? And don't be afraid. And don't let somebody tell you, well, you're a little lady, you need to carry a smaller gun. Well, I guess if they can guarantee that you're going to be attacked by a smaller attacker, but I doubt they can guarantee that, and they're not going to be with you. All right. That's it for today. I have a wonderful day ahead of me. I hope you do too. And think about it. Remember that we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow, and being prepared means having the right equipment and being able to use it. You all have a good day. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.